Greetings and a warm welcome to Rumbo Mineros. My name is Cesar Campos and joining me as the host of this show is Miguel Zaval. How are you feeling today, Miguel?
Cesar, how are you?
Alarming news for a week because it has detailed that Congressman Victor Cutipa, who comes from the ranks of Peru Libre, which later derived to Juntos por el Perú, Veronica Mendoza's party. Obviously, leftist movements opposed to mining would preside over none other than the Commission of Energy and Mines of the Congress of the Republic. This honestly draws our attention significantly because it had been said that even the caucuses that do not participate in the defense, as Mr. Cutipa has done, of illegal mining, of informal mining, which on 2 occasions presented legislative bills to expand the rainfall. We're going to take care of that commission, and apparently they have not done so.
This had already been warned by Congresswoman Diana Gonzalez days ago. If these caucuses regained control of the Energy and Mines Commission in Congress, it was suggested that the mining law would be at risk of being compromised.
That's right. And well, we are going to discuss all of this today with our guest, Congressman Roberto Chiabra, who is now a candidate for the presidency of the Republic in an alliance between the Christian Popular Party and the party founded by General Chiabra, Unity and Peace. Let's go with the report of the week.
The Energy and Mines Commission will be chaired by Congressman Victor Cutipa from the left-wing caucus, Together for Peru Magisterial Bloc Voices of the People. The parliamentarian from Moquegua has been pushing for proposals to enhance RINFO, a system that has been criticized for being exploited by informal and illegal miners to conduct their operations. Additionally, he has expressed his support for CONFEMIN during the recent protests, in which the reinstatement of the 50,000 miners excluded from RINFO for failing to meet formalization requirements was demanded. These connections give rise to worries because the Commission will need to discuss and make decisions on the newly proposed law regulating artisanal and small-scale mining known as the MAPE law, considered crucial for achieving effective formalization. Experts warn that this regulation must be technical, responsible, and the result of consensus to avoid setbacks. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Energy and Mines reported that it continues with the formalization of the 31,000 active RINFO registrations through 4 specific strategies. Likewise, he announced that they will present 5 proposals for inclusion in the MAP law, which must be discussed, resolved, and clearly specified in the regulation.
The report provides us with guidelines regarding the subject we plan to address with our upcoming guest, who happens to be none other than the congressman himself. Roberto Chiabra, also a presidential candidate for the alliance between his Unity and Peace Party and the Christian Popular Party. Congressman, it is a pleasure to have you here on Rumbo Minero.
Thank you. How are we doing? Thank you very much. Good morning.
Well, what we were commenting on in the introduction of the program with Miguel and what we expressed a certain full concern about is this announcement, the distribution of the presidency of the commissions. Mr. Victor Cutipa, known for his efforts in strengthening mining regulations, is actively engaged with both informal and illicit sectors within the industry, introducing 2 bills to address these issues. Would head nothing less than the Energy and Mines Committee, something that some parliamentarians like you had said we will try to avoid and prevent. Because in this last year and in an election year, you won't be able to deny it, Congressman Chiabra, it is extremely irresponsible for a man like Cutipa to be president of this.
There are several responsibilities here. The main responsibility also lies with the executive. I am acquainted with the ex-minister Mucho. He is someone I know well, knowledgeable about the subject, who nevertheless, the formulation of the MAPE law, the small-scale mining law, was greatly delayed, and it was presented in the last legislature. It offered a chance to the majority in Congress opportunities. Vote for something that we were all against. Those of us who were against illegality. Those of us who are against illegal mining being the engine of violence. You know, if we don't see it that way, then we are hypocrites too. If we claim to combat insecurity yet support illegal mining fueling violence, we are mistaken. It's no longer solely the responsibility of the Commission. Let's not prioritize actions that exacerbate the issue over addressing it directly. It's about the votes in the plenary. Because you might have a committee that drafts a project you don't agree with, but when it comes to the votes in the plenary, this commission has not lived up to expectations, showing a failure to meet the required standards. That was not what happened when the rainfall was extended.
Now commences the approval process for the MAPE law. Our knowledge of the previous stages will guide us through this. The incumbent, Mr. Paul Gutierrez, had presented at the 9th hour also when they were closing the legislature and when the change of commission leadership was already coming. A project that continued to extend and benefit the REINFO, and that is terrible. So, in the midst of the electoral campaign, which naturally we will address later on, concerning your parliamentary work, could you guarantee that you will vote against that measure?
I voted against it last time, when there were very few of us, and I will vote against it now. What is really drawing attention are those political parties that claim to defend the rule of law and democracy. How can they have affiliated people who are in favor of illegal mining? And thinking negatively, which sometimes we get right, it's not because they want more votes, but rather campaign financing. I believe it would be very irresponsible of those organizations to later present themselves as fighters against corruption, to present themselves as favorable to solving insecurity and then vote in favor of illegal mining.
Correct, Congressman. Well, in that elite, the topic of financing for the upcoming campaign, for the next electoral campaign, is also a worry. We are aware of the significant economic power that illegal mining currently holds. It's common knowledge that a few members of Congress are exchanging favors, right, to campaign financing, and this is going to intensify for the next ones. Well, elections. What is your perspective on this matter, considering that the National Jury of Elections ought to be closely monitoring the origin of these financial resources? Various parties' campaigns were different from one another.
I believe that the National Jury of Elections must be reading the scenario. The current scenario is different from 2021. Today, the scenario is depicted, as we are seeing in this specific issue, by the financing of the campaigns. If illegal mining is behind it, which no one can deny, the National Jury of Elections must make sure to reach an agreement with the Financial Investigation Unit at the very least in order to secure a fair election process. An agreement that allows it to have more strength to be able to oversee all the political parties that are going to participate. There are 43 candidates, 37 who might be, where they must have greater capacity of what? Of detecting illegal financing in a timely manner. So, if they are going to do it with their own means, they will surely say they don't have the capacity. But if you have one, you have an agreement with the Financial Intelligence Unit, with the Superintendency of Banking and Insurance. Therefore, I believe that you will have a much greater possibility of being able to detect illegal financing with enough time to act.
Now, we are going to discuss with candidate Roberto Chiabra, as it holds significant importance for us to understand his vision and perspectives. Not only specifically about mining, but I would start with the general framework, the national economy. How do you see it? How can it be driven forward? How can the attractiveness of investments in Peru also be reactivated? If we continue in the same vicious circle of excessive bureaucracy, the lack of talent also present in the state, and of course corruption, which is an element that prevents us from moving forward.
We must recognize that by targeting illegal and informal mining, we are inadvertently harming the entire mining industry as a whole. We must consider the bigger picture before taking action. Peru has 4 strengths: agriculture, mining, fishing, and tourism. We are hitting the mining sector. Engaging in informal mining can still impact mining development, while illegal mining poses a threat to large-scale operations, attracting transnational organized crime activities. It's a complex chain reaction with severe implications. You need to have 4 pillars. The formalization of small-scale and artisanal miners, along with the eradication of illegal mining, is crucial in combating organized crime. And you need to promote mining. If you fail to acknowledge your mining skills, you will overlook a valuable strength within yourself. Separately, for example, we talk about the northern-southern copper belt, but we don't talk, for example, about being the world's #1 copper producer. Without aiming for a big goal, you'll achieve less. If you fail to establish a comprehensive strategy and you set a major objective where you point out that Peru must possess to be the world's leading copper producer, where all the potential we have lies. Peru's untapped reserves offer great potential, but the key is to maintain a focus on continued exploration. Despite existing projects, as you correctly highlighted, this exploration must not wane. We have NGOs, an ideology that impedes the initiation of new projects and disrupts ongoing ones, impeding progress and innovation. Presence of organized crime deters investments, while bureaucratic system exacerbates the issue, hindering economic growth, which makes the investment slow. So if you don't realize that you have to speed up the procedures, simplify attracting investors to make it more accessible. Where are you? Why do we fail to see these obstacles when we lack a big goal? It is essential to have a clear vision and ambition to overcome challenges. Having a big goal in sight enables us to navigate through difficulties and achieve success. We have to confront and overcome all challenges encountered in our path.
Congressman, a significant number of our fellow citizens reside in close proximity to various mining operations. They have the idea that mining, it should be much more for them. Even then he speaks of the NGOs in which they incite these Peruvians, they attack mining operations with blockades and social conflicts. Candidates, right, who are going to these areas to say that they will be taken away from. Allowing mining companies access to land for exploitation raises concerns. How to effectively address this discourse around giving in to big miners? So that the Peruvians, right, from the interior of the country finally know the benefits that formal mining brings to Peru?
Behold, we have observed that accommodations were arranged for the 50,000 individuals who no longer met the requirements. They had the option to appeal in order to proceed with the process of formalizing their request. What have we seen by the deadline? 4%, that is 2,000. Therefore, it is important to understand that most individuals who are approaching illegal behavior, so to speak, are in the vast majority. People fail to understand the necessity of living peacefully with others. Then one wonders, those who are not formalized, do they want to or can't they? For those unable to formalize, the source of the issue is uncertain. Why struggle with meeting requirements that seem unattainable? Some believe they will never fulfill the necessary criteria. I have heard prominent miners mention that they have read about it. We should only ask them for two things: social responsibility with their workers and environmental responsibility for repairing environmental damage, and signs the contract for you. Because if it is observed that you begin to operate a concession without assuming any responsibility whatsoever, then the entity that suffers the damage is the major mining industry. Therefore, it is imperative that we actively seek out a viable solution. Fifth working table that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy have, and there is nothing you can say. Indeed, we are making progress because we are seeing that people are becoming formalized. We don't see a way out. We need to work together on both ends to ensure that we can provide you with the necessary guidance to formalize yourselves. Make sure to fulfill your tax obligations, declare your earnings, safeguard your employees, address environmental issues, and always uphold the law. That's what we have to tell you. Look what would benefit you by being legal. You wouldn't have any problems. What sets apart the failure to formalize them, the act of illegality, and the exploitation by both illegal immigrants and organized crime that exploits them financially?
And in response to a long-standing tradition of informality that Peru maintains, since this is nothing new, is it? In our nation, land was often illegally occupied. It was not owned by the state or a private entity. Right away, in place of to create a valid ownership culture and say, hey, you can't enter another's home, so water, drainage, and electricity were added, creating this chaos and this problem that also incites violence. General Chiabra.
It is the vulnerability of our system. You have judges and prosecutors, you have police, you have everything. Why? Since we lack responsibility and a role, our hands are tied in this situation. For me, this violence generated by illegal mining is worse than that of terrorism. Why? For an ideological reason. The money is at stake here, and the higher the price of gold climbs, the more problems we are going to encounter. Therefore, when regional and local governments participate in informal mining, we entrust them with responsibilities accordingly. This decentralization promotes accountability and localized decision-making. That's where we began to evade responsibility as a state. So I believe that now that the state has taken it on, it must realize that it needs to bring us all together. The justice system, the police system, we all need to be united under a single principle.
General Chiabra, we are going to continue with the interview now. If you would permit us just a very brief pause for a moment. We are here with the congressman, a general who is retired from active service. Very well known in the country, Roberto Chiabra, candidate for the presidency of the Republic for Unity and Peace and the Christian Popular Party. We'll be right back.
In the interview with Congressman Roberto Chiabra, who is also running for president with the National Unity Party, the conversation continued. Congressman, regarding the ongoing conflict between Peru and Colombia, it also brings up other aspects regarding the issue, including activities like drug trafficking, guerrilla warfare, illegal logging, and mining operations. Illegal too, because of the gold issue. It's also a rather complicated area because of these matters. In your opinion, how should this matter, this conflict initiated by President Petro, be managed going forward? Or perhaps we could propose an alliance between Peru, Colombia, and Brazil. To directly face these issues head-on is necessary.
Unfortunately, we live in an invertebrate America. Although we share a common background in history and language, priority issues include the interests of states and the region, emphasizing their importance in decision-making processes. A lot of particularity in the personality of the presidents and in the ideology. For example, in the year 2007, we had UNASUR, all the left wing. And in 2019, there was PROSUR. Today, neither UNASUR nor PROSUR work. The Pacific Alliance is functioning automatically. Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Chile, due to ideological reasons, are not functioning. Therefore, in addressing the issue at hand, it is worth noting that there exists an Amazon Cooperation Treaty dating back to 1978, which may provide a solution to the question of whether they can collaborate effectively. In the year 95, the organization was formed. And notice that President Dina Boluarte participated in the fourth session in 2023. That was carried out in Belém do Pará, where one of the agreements reached was to establish a sort of international police force for the protection of the region. 2 years have passed. And with what happened today with the Colombian president, everything is set back. So, there isn't that vision of a region facing a shared problem. Since his first term, President Lula has consistently championed the protection of the Amazon amidst revelations from the United States, advocating for its preservation and sustainability. That those small countries cannot protect the Amazon. I was Minister of Defense. My first meeting in the tripartite in Tabatinga was with the Minister of Defense of Colombia, of Brazil, and the three of us signed an agreement. In the past, providing security was easier when organized crime, illegal mining, and drug trafficking were not as prevalent as they are today. I think that as a country we lack a statesman-like vision, a regional vision, to face this threat together because it has been proven that one alone cannot.
In Peru, you stand out as one of the rare individuals who are highly knowledgeable about security issues, which implies a much deeper understanding than merely the military exercise or what seems to be warlike containment. However, it also necessitates a more delicate interpretation. Doesn't it capture your attention, General Chiabra, the fact that Colombia, following Petro's announcement, naturally has attempted to establish, so to speak, a sort of partnership with the military forces of Venezuela, according to them, to combat, isn't it, the narco-guerrilla? In the general vicinity, but from my perspective, or the perspective of many, it appears to be somewhat different. Regarding this threat that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has also made to first place a significantly higher bounty on the head of Maduro, who is undoubtedly a dictator and a murderer. And Petro comes out somewhat to his aid. Do you have a reading regarding that?
Their reading abilities are not up to par. You should know who the President of the United States is and what his actions and reactions are. A short while ago, he told Iran, in 2 or 3 weeks, I will give you an exemplary response. And he delivered the very next day. When the President of the United States, based on what has been leaked, is indicating that the Mexican drug cartels, plus the Aragua train, and the Venezuelan cartel of the Suns are global terrorist organizations, it is telling this entire region that he is going to deploy his armed forces. I believe that they must take into consideration the fact that he already has them targeted and that at any given moment a barrage of missiles could descend upon all of those organizations, particularly that drug trafficking operating in the jungle. That is Donald Trump's message. Donald Trump's message is, are you slipping me fentanyl or are you generating violence against me? Because look how many people El Salvador expelled from Venezuela. I think that's the message that isn't getting through. Catching. Remember that when the President of the United States pointed out that he was going to return the illegal Colombians, what did President Petro say? No, I don't receive it. I raise your tariffs by 50%. The next day he put up the planes. He is having a negative reaction here because you are not able to challenge a powerful entity. Like the US one, surgical procedures can be performed by the military.
Interesting.
Congressman, well, the question also goes as a presidential candidate. The issue of mining. The fight against illegal mining. Indeed, there have been some outcomes concerning the movement of this issue in Patas, subsequent to all of the incidents and fatalities that we have experienced, that we have seen. The government has taken some actions, although it has taken a considerable amount of time to accomplish. What does the future hold for cracking down on illegal mining activities? Utilize the current system in place today to achieve your goal. Should anything be altered here?
At first, we are concentrating specifically on the Patas region. Illegal mining in Peru is present throughout the country. And you cannot apply a single strategy to all. Illegal mining in Condorcanqui is not the same as in Nanay or in Patas. What exists in Chala, Puno, and Madre de Dios includes a variety of offerings. Therefore, having a clear strategy is essential for success in any endeavor. The first thing you need to do is remove the human resources, because in Madre de Dios, for example, we see children involved in illegal mining who haven't even finished primary school, or kids who finish high school instead of going to a university or a technological institute, and they go into mining. Next, eliminate transportation operations. Surely you go to Madre de Dios and you find, you come across parking areas intended for the sale of fuel, numerous gas stations, and all of them travel by bicycle. Deprive him of his supply lines, dismantle the bombs, and block access to the mercury. If you don't remove the resources enabling illegal mining, it cannot be stopped. Take action now to eliminate the supplies facilitating this activity. As I said, you need to have a strategy for each region. And as I pointed out, it must have a strategy with 4 pillars. Formalization, the fight against illegal mining, the dismantling of organizations that thrive on this, and the strengthening of mining. These 4 pillars is the extent to which a Mining Development Council grants you permission to operate. That the Prime Minister must preside over. Do you know why? Because all the ministers involved are here. And when all the ministers are present, there must be a head to guide and carry out comprehensive work. When the Culture Minister restricted the area in Ica, the Energy Ministry's presence became apparent to us, highlighting what was previously unseen. He said that I have nothing to do with illegal mining. In other words, as a country, we are not seeing a threat that requires a comprehensive strategy and a leader, the Prime Minister.
Final question. What would the President of the Republic, Roberto Chiabra, do with Petroperu?
If you observe, regarding Petroperu, we have already witnessed that actions should have been taken by them, for instance, divesting from assets that are not of any utility, restructuring the administrative structure to boost efficiency. I would get a strategic partner. 51 for Petroperu, 49 for the strategic partner. Unable to continue in this manner. Financing, and those people there generating pure debt, earning as if they were doing well. So let's find a strategic partner. Let's aim to recover it, because a significant investment has been made that cannot be lost, but we cannot continue as we are. Let's make an adjustment, a re-engineering, a reform. Among public companies, a significant issue arises when unqualified individuals, often friends or acquaintances, are appointed instead of competent candidates. Let's look for profiles. Those boards need to have functions that fulfill our requirements. And you will see how the quality increases. But we must necessarily find ourselves a partner. A partner that allows us to help AAA to be able to revive what we have and improve what we have.
Very well. Thank you very much, General Congressman of the Republic, presidential candidate, for being with us. We are excited to reconnect with you in the near future. The campaign is in its early stages, and we will be sure to carefully consider and implement some of your suggestions.
As I said at the beginning, we Peruvians have to start thinking long-term and big. Let's think about being the world's leading copper producers, and you will see how we all start looking higher and higher at our country.
Very well. Roberto Chiabra, a presidential candidate for the National Unity Alliance, was with us. We're going to a break, and we'll be right back. In the America Mining block of our operations, we link up with José Gonzáles, the international editor of Rumbo Minero magazine, all the way from Wall Street in New York. It's a pleasure to have you here, José. Great to connect with you.
My pleasure, too.
Well, President, Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, has indicated that she will go to the rescue of PEMEX, no less than the state oil company, a bit to clarify the red figures. In a similar fashion to Petro, this state-owned company also faces a situation like this. Peru, tell us what's happening there and what similarities we could establish with the Peruvian state oil company.
The announcement, Cesar, has pleasantly surprised the markets, specifically in the way that the Mexican government is now undertaking significant structural solutions to address the PEMEX problem. Claudia Sheinbaum and the Ministry of Finance announced last week, in these days, a new plan to reduce Petróleos Mexicanos' short-term debt between the year 2025 and 2027, so that the company can pay its own obligations starting in 2027. A 250 billion pesos investment fund is in the process of being established. $3.3 billion in which the 3 Mexican development banks, NAFIN and Banobras, are going to participate. And Bancomext, as well as public investment. The lowest tax rates are going to be kept in place, and a support measure will be put into effect for the Ministry of Finance in order to decrease the financial debt and commercial of the corporation. The idea is to reduce the current 99 billion in financial debt to 89 billion by the end of this year and 77 billion by the year 2030. For reference, PEMEX holds the title of the most heavily indebted oil company globally. With financial debt, pension debt, and supplier debts, the last one is $25 billion. The debt for social benefits is $70 billion. Almost 200 billion, 2/3 of Peru's gross domestic product. Well, The idea is that these 13 billion are used to finance projects this year and that they participate aggregated to commercial banking and the public sector. In order to achieve this goal, the federal government and the Ministry of Finance and Public Credit are providing guarantees to lower the expenses related to financing. For PEMEX, the purpose of this vehicle is to support projects and guarantee payment to suppliers. The President of Mexico emphasized that the Ministry of Finance will stay committed to this goal. Backing the company financially with public spending. PEMEX has just issued some securities on the 28th of July, which are called, securities. They are pre-capitalized. They were not issued by PEMEX, but rather by the Ministry of Finance, and the resources secured by the Ministry of Finance have been handed over to PEMEX so that PEMEX can lower its financial debt without affecting its balance sheet. These pickups, as they are known in English, are going to be utilized to amortize debt and to settle payments for suppliers. These bonds make it possible to attend to the immediate liquidity that the company needs. The market responded. They offered 7,000 million. 12,000 million were placed, and Fitch has upgraded PEMEX's rating to BB, which means is precisely what the rating agencies have been suggesting and demanding in the case of Peru. Address the structural financial problem to restore productive capacity and ensure viability. It serves as a decent model for the tasks we must carry out in Peru on behalf of the company.
Jose, we have 1.5 minutes left, but I wanted to ask you about Chevron's presence, the third largest oil company in the world, in Peru. Can you provide us with some insight into the upcoming exploration plans and the implications for oil production in our country?
Briefly, Miguel, the question we ask ourselves, what is Chevron, the third largest oil company in the world after ExxonMobil and Saudi Aramco, doing in a country like Peru that produces 40,000 barrels? Specialized media outlets in the United States are reporting that Chevron is optimistic about the hydrocarbon potential in Peru. The company is actively seeking out undiscovered reserves in the region. Sees a good setting. There is significant potential for enhancing the country's energy security and economic outlook. It would also attract interest from investors, specifically those eyeing Chevron, the industry trends and opportunities, and the competitive landscape in the region. Chevron has acquired 35% of the shares that Occidental Anadarko held. In blocks C61, C62, and C63, there is a third partner called Westlawn, who is the financial partner with 30%. The consortium has announced an investment of $80 million in the exploratory projects of Block C62. They are going to drill 5 exploratory and 10 confirmatory wells with an investment of up to $80 million. The 3D seismic is done. It's very costly. And conservatively, the C62 should yield 100,000 barrels daily. It might reach 250,000. Why is it important? Chevron produces 3 million barrels daily. 250,000 barrels is 8% of their production. It may be small, but it holds great significance for the company. It highlights that Peru does indeed have oil potential.
Special thanks to José Gonzáles from Wall Street in New York for his insightful remarks, perspectives, and engaging discussions. We truly appreciate all the valuable insights shared with José Gonzáles. You can find all topics related to the mining sector in the leading industry magazine, Rumbo Minero, to which you are also able to gain access over the internet in a completely free manner. That is www.rumbominero.com. A commercial break and we'll be back.
Friends, today we are going to talk about a topic that has been recurring in recent weeks, regarding the discussion of an MPE law, ancestral mining. Lately, there have been emerging narratives hinting at the potential for a certain outcome to materialize in the near future, regarding the possibility of the existence of what is known as the ancient ancestral miner. It is not exactly known, it's a myth. No one knows who the ancestral miner is. First, it is not known if it is an ancestral miner. From before the arrival of the conquest, before the Incas, before the Corral, it is not exactly known how to define ancestral mining. However, it acts as a symbol for identification that is basically ideological. And what do they use? Ancestral mining, the story of ancestral mining. Well, what is essentially desired is to legitimize the invasions of concessions, of modern mining. Thus, ancestral mining functions as a mobilizing myth. A mobilizing myth is being used to justify the current invasion of territories that belong to others, once again legitimizing the conquest made by informal miners. Ancestral mining, as we mentioned, does not exist. It is basically a myth. We don't know where it comes from. You don't know who they are. You don't know how many there are. You don't know what they are doing. We don't know if an ancestral miner can use technology or not. But besides that, there is one important thing. Mining operations require proper documentation, adherence to regulations, compliance with the rule of law, and a foundational constitution. And ancestral mining is not that. In any case, you will tell me, what did the Chimus do? What did the Incas do? Or all the pre-Hispanic cultures? Well, they engaged in historical mining. And that further confirms that this country, besides being a fishing nation, besides being an agricultural nation, it is essentially a nation dedicated to mining. A mining country that has always engaged in mining. But it has engaged in mining in the past was different from traditional mining practices. Ancestral mining has evolved into a never-ending concept in which we don't know absolutely anything about it. But we do know that behind that narrative, behind that story, something very dangerous is hidden. To legitimize the concessions invaded by the miners who are not formal. That is the goal, and it must be revealed. Thank you very much. See you next week.
We've reached the end of the program, Miguel, and we must highlight the dialogue we've had with Congressman Roberto Chiabra. He is now a candidate for the presidency of the Republic under the banner of an alliance named National Unity, because I believe that in his capacity as a parliamentarian, we can still benefit from what you have pointed out here, your commitment to reject from every point of view, the approval and some expansion of the reinfo, and of course this ownership that they have threatened to give to a representative of Together for Peru or the Teachers Bloc, an alliance formed by the former party of the coup leader Pedro Castillo, which is set to assume leadership of the Energy and Mining Committee. It's a true insult to hear the commission was promised to responsible hands only to see it fall into irresponsible ones.
Well, here at Rumbo Minero, we will remain vigilant, right? So that this reinforcement is worked on technically and is no longer politicized and only for the benefit of a few.
Indeed, that has always been our banner, always betting on mining. Formal, responsible, sustainable, and deeply socially committed naturally to its community. My name is Cesar Campos, and together with Miguel Zavala, we have been hosting the current program of Rumbo Minero. We look forward to seeing you again next week.